Hey folks, welcome to Eastmans Journal Podcast. I'm your host, Ike Eastman. I'm going to do something a little bit different, something I haven't done yet on this podcast, and that's called a solo podcast. That's just where I'm going to talk about a couple things that are important to me and some funny stories and a couple things that I think you should be aware of in your own life that might help you pass on hunting and maybe get a little bit more out of your adventures. So one thing that the Eastman family is really good at, and that my grandfather instilled in my father, and my father instilled it in both Guy and I, is the sense of adventure. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Eberly Stock. Eberly Stock is one of my favorite backpacks. Now, I've been wearing their backpack for almost 20 years. They have lightweight backpacks. They have modular backpacks, everything from their main frame, which is just a frame pack that you can put bags on. They have these cool outside called bat wings that you can use. So check them out at eberlystock.com and make sure you tell them Ike sent you. This episode brought to you by Leupold Optics. The folks at Leupold have been manufacturing top-notch glass for over 100 years. They're a family-owned business just like mine, and that's why I'm so proud to partner with them to bring you these genuine conversations. If you're in the market for a rifle scope, look at the VX5 HD series. The VX5 HD line of scopes are the workhorse for the backcountry hunter. While you're at it, don't forget to check out the Leupold's full line of range-finding binos, regular binos, and their spotting scopes that are second to none and field-tested in some of the hardest conditions on Earth. The Leupold Gold Ring is the gold standard. Not to mention, in an extremely unlikely event that your Leupold glass has a hiccup, Leupold offers a lifetime guarantee that won't let you down. Leupold, be relentless. You know, adventures don't have to be this unbelievable Tajikistan Marco Polo sheep hunt. Not that those aren't adventures and not that those aren't epic, but not every adventure has to have that level of complexity and that level of sheer fear and terror and, life-threatening, et cetera, et cetera. An adventure can be just as much fun and maybe even more fun if you just do it in your backyard. This year, I've been able to do a bunch of really neat stuff in the hunting industry and in the hunting space with my family. And I enjoy taking my kids out on hunting trips. One of the funnest trips that we did this year was we went to Africa. Now, you can watch that on YouTube. It's going to be a 3-part series, but I took my girls over to South Africa for a plains game. And you go, wow, that's a little bit out of my budget. Well, take a look at it. You might be surprised on how actually inexpensive and affordable that type of adventure really is. It was a fun trip. We did more things than I even imagined. And it wasn't like we just woke up one day and said, hey, let's go to Africa. We actually been planning this trip since 2019 and taking my girls on an adventure such as this. Now, let me back up a little bit. My wife and I'm going to talk about how that sense of adventure was instilled on us. My wife and I first got married back in 99, and my dad that summer had my mom and my dad had their first trip to Africa, and they went to Tanzania with one of their good friends. And they had an unbelievable trip. And this was Tanzania in 1999, where they were killing huge buffalo. It was a true wild, wild west. They got into all kinds of crazy things. Like they got into a firefight with poachers. They got into a buffalo charging, just a ton of cool stuff. If you're interested in that adventure, check out my dad's YouTube channel. It's called Blaze Trails Forgotten. And he just dropped recently a buffalo adventure, and he talks about buffalo hunting and he talks about Ridge Taylor. It's a super cool YouTube video that he put together. But that's back in 1999. My wife and I get married, and then he immediately comes home. In fact, I think he'd been home like 2 weeks, maybe a week, maybe just a few days when he got back from Africa that I got married. And he was telling us all the stories. And he had decided while he was over there that he was going to help his kids, all 3 of us, go on an adventure just like that. Now, he didn't take us on the adventure. We had to pay our own way. He gave us enough incentive that it made it worth it, but he didn't pay for it. Remember that. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. And so my wife and I in 2003 that was our turn to go over there, and we had an unbelievable adventure. Now, what it did for a 22-year-old or 24-year-old kid was it gave us a sense of the world. We as Americans have a tendency to think that the world thinks like we do, and it's not true. Americans think uniquely because of that Bill of Rights and that Constitution and our amendments. We think a lot different than most of the world. And by going to Tanzania, my wife and I got the opportunity to see the world in most of it, in the way that most people live and most people think in the world. And that is not understanding or knowing where their next meal is going to come from, but they're still happy. Not understanding, the complexities of how an airplane works, but they're still happy. In fact, we had a really funny incident trying to explain what the moon was to our trackers and our driver. And we were sitting there watching the sun go down in Tanzania and having a nice cold refreshment and just trying to explain as the moon was coming up what it was and how the moon revolves around the earth. It was absolutely mind-numbing and mind-opening. At that moment, I thought, if my wife and I are blessed to have children, I need to instill this in them. So we fast forwarded to 2019. We took a while to have kids. I didn't want to do it too early to where our kids didn't appreciate it, didn't understand it, didn't remember it. We decided in 2019 that was about the time that they're going to be old enough to remember it, old enough to make that type of travel, old enough to stay safe, but still have the impact. Well, God gave us COVID, right? Well, somebody did. I don't know who did, but God gave us an opportunity to put that off for a couple years. Well, in 2023, we said, okay, the world's opened up. It's now safe again to travel. We don't have to worry about getting stuck in Africa for 80 days like we heard stories during 2020 and those types of things. So we said, okay, let's find the place and how we're going to do it. My dad actually had gone over to Africa the year before in 2023. And he'd done a ton of research. As he's retired, one of the things he really enjoys is watching YouTube and doing research on the best places that they're killing the biggest trophies, that the opportunities are good, they're safe, all of these things. And I said, hey, Dad, can you help me? I'm busy with teenage kids and running a business and all of these things, producing this podcast. And I said, can you help me find a place to go that we can take your grandkids on this type of adventure? And so he get to work and he watched. I think he's consumed every African hunting production on YouTube, hundreds of hours watching YouTube productions, and because of what he's done in his life, tearing them apart to what is Hollywood and what is true and what it really means. And he narrowed it down to 6 of them. And so out of the 6, my girls and I consumed a lot of their YouTube content of these 6 people, their 6 outfits. And then we went to a conservation show. I decided there's a couple things I want to do. I want to take my girls to one of these huge conservation shows. If it's Hunt Expo, which they did go to, if it's DSC in Dallas, which they did go to, or if it's Safari Club in Nashville, which they haven't gone to yet. I want them to experience that. And I want them to just entrench themselves into, the culture, the languages that are spoken, the mounts, the hustle and bustle, the buzz of all of that. And we're going to try and pick the outfitter that we're going to go with. We're going to put it down a deposit and then figure out the logistics. The great thing about these shows is you can go there and you can sit down like we did. By the time we got to, we decided to take him to DSC in Dallas because it was early enough that they weren't in school yet. They were still on Christmas break. And we decided, okay, we're going to take them to DSC and we're going to sit down with these outfitters and we're actually going to interview them and we're going to have a list of things that are important to each one of us and check it off the box. Plus they have these travel agents like Gracie Travel and these types of places that do the logistics. That's the hardest part. How do I get from my local airport all the way to Namibia, South Africa, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, wherever, get there with the weapons, take the trophies, and then figure out how to get the trophies back and us back all the way back to my local airport. That's a lot of logistics. Hundreds of hours are applied into trying to get just the right things. Is that the right gun permit? Is that the right form? Is that is that a long enough layover to get from one terminal to another, or going through customs, or whatever the logistics are? So you can sit down with those types of companies at these shows. So you can do, it's kind of a one-stop shop. And it's a little overwhelming for the girls at first, but it was a lot of fun. We got to, sit and walk around and say, do you know what that animal is? And would you like to take one of those? And my youngest had an affiliate. She really wanted to shoot a monkey over there and then get it mounted with a tuxedo, holding a silver plate, and putting it in our guest bathroom, holding the toilet paper. She didn't end up doing that which I kind of figured would happen. It was the buzz of the show, and they had a couple there. And once she saw him in the wild, it was going to be a completely different story. But you let them dream, you let them get excited, and it was a lot of fun. So we sat down with the 3 outfitters that we had picked, and we had come up with previously, we had come up with a list of things that are important. And the girls had some things that they really wanted to do. They really wanted to go on a balloon ride over the savannah. You can imagine, in a little girl's mind, that is, the sun rising and the smells and it being quiet and all that stuff. That was something that was important to them. So we found a place that had that opportunity. And then there was a couple things that they dreamed about, that they'd heard stories from grandpa and grandpa talking about, or mom and dad's trip, or Uncle Guy's trips, that weren't gonna be something that we could do, but I let them dream. And so we sat down with these guys at Dallas Safari Club and interviewed them. Spent 45 minutes to an hour with every single one of them, and then went back for lunch and said, okay, that's narrow. Let's process of elimination. Who don't we want to go with? And not that any of them were bad. This is the other thing that you have to understand. But you get to that point, we would have had an epic adventure with any one of them. But what we did is trying to find the one that fit our needs and what we were after, what we were trying to accomplish. And so we eliminated one, and it was down to 2. And partially because these 2 outfitters were dads of kids, and they had the kids in camps, and they understood that family time and the amount of family that what we were trying to do is just, it's going to be family. It's going to be family oriented, family. I didn't want to leave my girls at the camp and then go hunting. I wanted them to experience the whole thing as much as is logistically possible. And so then we went to lunch, and we came back after lunch, and we sat down with them again with some additional questions, and we picked Xander Osmer Safaris. And the reason we did is because it's family oriented. They're on their 3rd generation. In fact, the 3rd generation was in camp with us, and we got to hang out with them. They're little kids, but my girls absolutely adored them. And they understood the family dynamic, and they understood what we were trying to do. The accommodations were good. It was safe. That's the other reason I went to South Africa. I wanted their first experience. It won't be their last, I hope. But their first experience to be cultural, but not to where it was too far over the top. I didn't want them to be scared to ever go back, but I wanted them to understand that the world is different and the people are different in the world. And so we went with Xander, and it was an unbelievable experience. I also did stack the deck a little bit in regards to travel. We could have went from, let's say, Dallas or Houston or Atlanta straight to Johannesburg, South Africa. It's a long flight. It's 15 hours, 16 hours. It's a long flight, but it's doable. It wasn't any longer than what we did do. But I had this premonition that the Middle East is going to be a place that possibly in my kids' lives, they won't be able to visit again. or maybe ever. And so I decided to fly through Dubai. It's a little longer as far as in the airport system, but it was going to expose them to another culture that is radically different than America. And they would experience racism, where they're the minority, significantly the minority. Two little blonde girls wandering around the Dubai airport, they kind of stand out. And I wanted, but I wanted it to be safe. And Dubai is one of the safest airports. I'm not saying it's perfect, because it wasn't. There were some crazy things that happened in that airport for the 2 times we were in there, on the way there and on the way back. But it was safe enough. And so we flew through Dubai, really long flights. The girls got to understand how big the world is. When you get on the plane in Seattle and you fly straight north, all the way up the Rocky Mountains, over the North Pole. In fact, I have a photo of the North Pole, and as we flew over it, and then down Russia and Iraq and into Dubai. And then you get off the plane in Dubai, and you've been on that plane for 15 hours, and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, we're only halfway there. We have another flight in, I think it was 6 or 7 hours. We have another flight that goes from here to Johannesburg. And then we get in a car. And I think the flight from Dubai to Johannesburg was 9 hours or 10 hours, something like that. And then we get in a car and we drive through the side, or the hill country of South Africa. We drive west for 6 hours. I mean, it is planes, trains, and automobiles to get to camp, which gives you a little bit more of appreciation once you receive there, or get there, and once you receive some of the amenities and the great food and the great camaraderie and all of those things, just they hit a little bit harder. So we went there. I gave the girls a budget. Now this is key. I gave them a budget, but I didn't pay for all of it. They've been working for 2 years on their own, mowing lawns and working in our shipping department and doing odds and ends stuff, the county fair, selling their animals at the county fair. And they've been working so that they could pick up their portion of the taxidermy bill, or the trophy fee bill, because that will give a bigger impression to them. I'm always a proponent that you got to have some skin in the game in order for you to really appreciate something. You can't be giving it free. My dad used to say this all the time. If I give you something free, how much is it worth to you? Nothing, because it was given to me free. But if I have skin in the game, it's worth something. And so I did that with them. It's not exorbitant amounts. We didn't go over there and shoot the big 5, or didn't go over there and do crazy things. I let them shoot zebras. My youngest shot an impala. My oldest shot a nyala. And of course, I got a warthog. And what I was really after was a greater kudu, which is just an amazing animal. And that's a lot like hunting mule deer here in the U.S. It's spot and stock, and they're really, really in tuned in their environment. And, they're really wily. They're hard to see in the bush. They've got unbelievable hearing, unbelievable smell. I think I killed the 26th bull that we saw. And I think it was on day 6, maybe 5 or 6. It's not easy. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Silencer Central. Silencer Central, thank you for supporting us. If you would like to support Silencer Central, if you have any interest in a silencer, which I encourage because it is a game changer in the field, check out silencercentral.com. They will walk you through the paperwork online, as well as they can ship that silencer directly to your doorstep. So check them out and tell them Ike sent you. So that was our trip to South Africa, and I'm going to do this again when they're a little bit older, maybe with their kids, maybe with their spouses, and take them to a little bit more rustic environment. Maybe Zimbabwe. You never know, because these countries over there, they change constantly. You never know which is going to be more dangerous than the other. I mean, tomorrow we could wake up in Tanzania, be under siege from somebody, and it be in, we can't get in there. You never know. But we'll do that again. The other thing I'm hoping to do before they graduate high school, one's in high school, one's in late middle school, is I want to take them to New Zealand to show them the unbelievable majesticness of New Zealand and Australia. And so that they've been on a lot of the continents in the world. And those two are very unique, as you can imagine. I'd like to do that. So this sense of adventure, now that in New Zealand those are unbelievable adventures, but I'm not saying you can't have those here at home. Let me tell you about one of my favorite hunts this year. And I go on a ton of hunts, as you can imagine. But one of the most impactful ones that I did is I took my youngest and one of her friends on a whitetail hunt here in our little town of Powell, Wyoming, in a farm field. And how this transpired is that they came to me, and Wyoming's really cool. Our school district's really, really unique. They allow there's a couple teachers and principals in our school that decided, you know what? There's so many hunters in our school district, and we're having to, trying to scramble around and find people to teach hunter safety after hours and find venues and all of this stuff. What if we just made it a curriculum in school? And it's an opportunity. It's not something that they had to take, but what if it was an option to them? And so they put through about 40 kids every year. In middle school, when they turn, so in Wyoming, you can hunt when you turn 12, which that's 6th grade. And so they took, I believe it was 6 weeks out of PE, and they gave you an opportunity, instead of going to PE, to go to hunter safety. And they did the testing, the skills. They even did the range day, all of that stuff in middle school. And it's just an unbelievable thing. So my youngest and one of her really good friends came to me last summer and said, Mr. Eastman, if I get my hunter safety, and this little friend, her name is Lily. She said, if she comes from a family that shoots a lot, but just has never been in the hunting world, never hunted, and but shoots a lot. Lily's shot her dad's guns. They spend some time at the range, but didn't have the skills or the means to go hunting. She came to me and said, Mr. Eastman, if I take my hunter safety and pass, do you think you could take me hunting? Yeah. How do you say no to that, right? Take another generation hunting? Absolutely. And so those two spent a bunch of time, and they worked really hard at getting their hunter safety passed. And they did it in enough time that we actually were able to hunt the same year. So they passed their hunter safety test on Thursday, got their credentials on Thursday, and we were hunting Saturday morning. So we took them out, and here's what one of the things. This, as well as in South Africa, you have to stack the deck for these kids. We not only giving them lots of opportunities, but setting a bar that's realistic, setting a time frame that's realistic, understanding that they're going to move, that they're going to be loud, that they don't have the killer instinct, that they don't have, the ability to suffer through cold or suffer through heat. My girls grew so much in South Africa just with mental toughness. Being able to sit in a blind when it's 95 degrees and the sun is just beating on you, and it feels like you can't drink enough water, and you're jet lagged and you're just tired. All of those things, mental toughness. But we stacked the deck. We put them in a blind. We didn't death march them and try and find a zebra. We did a couple of those, but it wasn't immediately, and it wasn't super long. We shot suppressed, so we didn't create any bad habits with flinches. We shot a lower caliber than I probably would have normally taken at South Africa. We took 6.5 Creedmoor for the zebra in those plains game. Some people might, man, that's a little light. It worked. In fact, it worked beautifully. But I didn't put a 300 in front of them. I didn't put a 460. I let them shoot something that they're comfortable with, that they're accurate, and that they shot a bunch. We shot a bunch last summer and spring before we left. Same thing when I took these two girls whitetail hunting. is they'd shot a bunch. They understood the rifle. They understood how to load it. I'm not saying I didn't help them. And there's some things that I did that I wouldn't normally do for other people. For instance, I zoomed the scope all the way out, let them find the animal, and then as they see the animal in the scope, I zoom it in to make it a little bit easier of a shot. Those are things that that are taught, that they can learn over time, but in order to have them be successful, get engaged, get addicted to it, you gotta give them an experience that is really, really fun. So it's not death marches. It's not sitting in a tree stand and they're freezing to death. Not that those don't make great stories, and they did get cold a couple days, but not to the point where they don't ever want to do it again. So we took them out to some property that we have access to here, and it's a cornfield, and we knew the deer were in and out, and we could shoot either does or bucks. We could have shot mule deer or whitetail, but we set a rule that we're only shooting whitetails. We have a ton of whitetail here in this valley, and the mule deer are suffering, so we're only shooting whitetail, and we're gonna try and call some of these does because the farmer needed. They were eating them out of house and home. So we sit in a blind. There's no heaters, but we sit in a blind so they can be wiggly and they can be, 12-year-old girls giggly and move around, and, everything. Walking in there in the dark is a unique experience. Walking out of the blind in the dark to the vehicles an experience. All those things that they normally wouldn't do as a 12-year-old girl in, even in Powell, Wyoming. They got that experience, and it was so much fun. It was just as fun for me as them. And I got to see them in their true light. And I've said this over and over again. You want to see somebody's true personality, true being, take them on a hunting trip, because you're going to see them happy. You're going to see them cold. You're going to see them frustrated. You're going to see them mad. You're going to see them mad at themselves. You're going to see them mad at the situation. You get to see the gamut of all of the different emotions, and you really get to see a glimpse of who that person is. And we did that with these two little girls. Lily was able to take a nice little spike buck whitetail, and she made a great shot, and we had a little tracking, and so they learned how to track the blood in the cornfield and the high fives. And then we took the buck back, loaded him whole, and we were able to gut him out in my shop and let him hang for a couple days, and then we bring him back now remember, they're doing basketball practices and volleyball practices, and whoever knows what other practices in the middle of all of this, plus school, plus. And so a couple days, like 3 or 4 days later, they came out, and I set it up, and I taught them how to butcher that whitetail, and it was an experience that those two will remember the rest of their lives. In fact, I got a letter from Lily, probably 3 or 4 weeks later, that she was just overwhelmed and so appreciative of the time that she spent with my youngest Timber and I in the blind. It was so much fun. So I say all this just to help you, give you encouragement to take your kids, but set realistic expectations. Don't take them on death marches. Don't sit them in a tree stand. This isn't your hunt. This is, I'm not saying that those hunts are bad. Set aside a hunt or two for yourself where you want to test your own limits and test your own gear and test your own mental aptitude. But set a hunt aside for your kids, for your nephews, for the neighbor kid, for your nieces, for the neighbor girl, for your kids' friends. Set a hunt aside for them that you can stack the deck. Shooting suppressed is key. Giving them a good pair of binoculars so they can see, helping them find some clothing that works. That's the other thing about a blind. I'm looking at two little girls. They're sitting in pink snow pants and white snow pants and pink hats, and it doesn't matter as much. So stack the deck, but do that. It is so fulfilling. You find out what hunting is about and what passing it on is. Because think about it. If somebody didn't do that for you, you would not be hunting. You would not be who you are today. Somebody did that for you. And maybe they did it the wrong way, and you can remember back going, oh yeah, I remember the old man stuffed me on that tree row and I sat there and shivered in the rain for seemed like 4.5 hours and didn't see anything. And it was just a brutal, unbelievably horrible experience. And I'm not even sure why I still hunt. Well, you had an experience that got you addicted to it. And so give that experience to another kid. And remember, adventure is something that you get to take to the grave with you when you're laying on your deathbed. And that's why I ask all of my guests, what are you going to be thinking about on your deathbed? Well, here's mine. I'm going to be thinking about my family and the adventures that we shared, when I'm gone, they will remember me because of that adventure, because of that time that we spent in the woods, in the wild, in South Africa, in a cornfield here in Powell. Those are the adventures. Those are the things that they're going to remember about me, that they're going to pass on to their kids and to their grandkids. Because all we get to leave behind is our legacy. And our legacy are the people closest to us. I heard Jerry Jones say this the other day. Why not work and be with as close to your family as possible? Because rather than just holidays and special occasions, because that is the people that are going to be most impactful in your life, and you're going to have the most impact in theirs. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this solo podcast. It's something unique, but it's been something that's been weighing on my heart to talk about is adventure, passing it on to the next generation, to the kids that don't have that expectation or have that opportunity, to your own kids, to your own grandkids. And remember, this is really yours to lose or yours to live. So until next time, thanks for watching. I appreciate it.